was my first year, 2013. It was probably the St. Cloud Tech and Buffalo Boys 5 overtime game in the section championship. So and Buffalo won that game. It was an incredible game to cover. I mean, just the gym was packed, and that was incredible just to be there. You know,
Right.
I was, again, I don't pay attention to followers, but I think I picked up just that game alone was like 100 followers in just like 2 hours. Just
Really?
because people were wondering what's going on.
This is the Buffalo Community Podcast, all about the greatest small town in the USA, the people in it, and how it all works together. Here are your hosts, Tyler Reiss and Mark Benzer.
All right, here we are, episode 200 something.
I think it's in the 60s.
60
Just
something.
the regular 60s, not the 200s.
Yeah. Got with us today somebody you probably recognize here in person, but if you don't, Rob LaPlante, sports editor of the Wright County Journal-Press, has been for the last 7 years, and we're excited to have you in. And
No, that was a nice little surprise you gave me, asking me to come in yesterday.
well, I gave you 12 hours notice. I figure that's enough, you know, just springing on somebody. But I'm glad it worked out on short notice for you to come in.
No, honestly, I had some open time today, so worked out perfect.
Yeah, which open time is not something that I would ever associate with you. You work hard, you're everywhere, and glad it worked.
It's been pretty crazy this spring, so
Yeah.
but last spring, not so crazy.
Not so great.
Crazy in other ways.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciate is almost the play-by-play and updates of people who aren't there on Twitter. Follow you on Twitter. It's
Sure.
like all these local teams like, oh, cool. Like, I don't follow the girls hockey team, but I liked that. I could actually look and get those updates. So that's one thing I really think that's changed in, well, I guess I could read about it in next week's paper, but you're there active and you've attended a lot of sporting events.
Yeah, you know, I guess with a weekly newspaper, you know, by the time you get it next week, a lot of that news is, you know, old or
Yeah.
so. Social media is good that way, and it helps me as well because, you know, the old school reporters would, you know, scratch their notes down, and you know, I use Twitter as kind of a tool more so as, you know, a lot of people like the information and stuff, but you know, if I want to reference back to something from 2019, it's still there, you know,
Right.
so
Yeah.
or a photo or whatever. So
Yep.
I use it as a tool, and appreciate that you guys like it.
Yeah. Oh, I think everybody likes it. And I think that has been an aspect that, you know, with just having worked with the good sports editors that Buffalo has had come through town over the last 20 years.
There's been a lot of them.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing has just been your dedication to being places. I know I've heard stories about days when you were down at the softball state tournament in the morning or afternoon and you're jumping in your car and you're going up to St. Cloud for a, you know, different sporting event. And so that's been noticeable, and it's not anything that, I mean, I've heard a lot about just people appreciating that.
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm definitely not in it for the followings. Mm-hmm. You know, in fact, I enjoyed my Twitter account better when it was just the 10 fantasy football friends. So get away with a little more stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But otherwise, you know, I don't like the attention in the spotlight. So if someone retweets, I love that, but I could care less if it was retweeted or not, you know.
Sure. So would it kind of scare you to find out we've got 250,000 followers for the podcast right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we don't.
Because we don't. Yeah, it's just that's kind of a running joke between Mark and I, and nobody will ever really know how many we have except me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of just everything loosen up a little bit. You're getting crazier, busier this spring. You cover all of Wright County. Is that true?
we kind of, for the high school sports and local community school stuff, it's mostly Buffalo.
Sure.
But when you get to the state tournaments, there's, I believe, 9 schools in the area, if you include Rockford. And, yeah, we'll pick
Some
them
of
up.
us do.
We'll
Sure.
pick them up.
Some of us include Rockford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends what side of the river.
Yeah. So, when you're covering some of these events, a lot of them don't require any kind of media credential, right? You're showing up to a football game, high school football game. But then when you're getting into some of the other bigger events, maybe state tournament games, is that a situation where you would be required to have some sort of a media credential, so you're not paying admission to all these things? And
Yeah, and the high school league is pretty strict on state tournaments. You have to apply for it, put your, affiliation down every tournament. This year was really tricky just because of the COVID stuff. You actually had to have credentials for covering things, like regular stuff, and they just loosened up on a lot of the stuff like masks and stuff.
Sure.
So, but all year, I was required to distance and mask. And
Yep.
At Buffalo, they kind of know me, so I was still required to do that, but it wasn't quite as tough to get in, so to speak. But.
Right. And is there a certain amount of, like, let's just say, I mean, you are a sports editor for a newspaper. Could you apply for credentials for any kind of sporting event, and then it's just kind of a matter of whether you get one or not? Vikings game, for example. Or,
Well, I could apply for it, but I rarely do. I'm kind of, when I have that free time,
you don't want to work.
yeah. There's only so much sports I do watch a lot of sports at home, excuse me, but, a lot of times you're just going to get shot down anyways,
Sure.
because, I would need some sort of storyline as well.
Okay.
And because otherwise if I was just sitting there, like, being a fan, trying not to be a fan, they're not going to want you in there next time, so.
Yep.
But there's a lot of things where Buffalo, at the next level in college or St. Michael or something like that, they'll have some athletes move on to the Division I or whatever. And I have covered college hockey tournaments at XL and stuff like that.
Sure.
So that's fun.
Yep.
You can use your press that way. And
Yep.
Do you have a specific event? This is just your most memorable thing. I'm glad I was here to see this. What was that?
80-70, the high school football game, Buffalo and Elk River. That was an incredible night. I don't know if you guys know what I'm referring to.
I do.
A couple years ago,
Yeah. Aiden Bauman. Buffalo football, their offense was just stacked, and everyone knows Elk River scores at will. But that was a memorable, as far as like big game, like on the line, state tournament. It's my first year, 2013. It was probably the St. Cloud Tech and Buffalo boys 5 overtime game in the section championship. And Buffalo won that game. It was an incredible game to cover. Just the gym was packed and
basketball.
Boys basketball. Sorry,
And that's fine.
And that was incredible just to be there.
Right.
I don't pay attention to followers, but I think I picked up just that game alone was like 100 followers in just like 2 hours. Just
Really?
because people were wondering what's going on here. So.
Yeah, in a 5 overtime in basketball.
It was not one of them overtimes where they were just holding the ball,
Right.
It was an exciting game. So that was probably the best game I've covered in the area.
Sure.
Or memorable, I should say.
Yeah. Sure. And I guess I'm kind of surprised that you've only been here since 2013, because I would have thought that you were here in 2007 when the boys won the state basketball championship, but it was well before your time.
Outside of individuals, I don't think I've covered a team championship. For high, there's been plenty of fine art stuff that's went on, but as far as team sports, I don't think I covered a championship.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It could be my jinx that I
Right,
bring
yeah.
to the table. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what we're here today for, is to really say stop that.
Yeah, no.
We were knocking down banners for years before you came along.
No, we did that. Well, one time.
Yeah, the one time.
What was it? What was, the last year like in terms of, you kind of get your job taken away from you in a lot of ways, as a sports guy, and trying to figure out, okay, how kind of recreate your career there for a little while. What was that like?
You're just talking about last year?
COVID. And yeah.
It was tough. I was still able to get stories out because, for sports. Fortunately, there was a lot of transaction stuff, and I wouldn't normally make a huge deal about new coaches or stuff like that, but I was able to turn that somehow into a story and stuff.
Sure.
Whether people read it or not, I don't know, but
Right, yeah.
I don't. But it was tough, and we were also in transition. We were switching news editors, so last summer I was spending a lot of time at the news desk, going out getting, some news
Non-sports.
stories, and then even news was just all COVID. And there
Yeah.
wasn't anything open, but there was some friendly protests and stuff like that going on last summer. And
Sure.
I was out shooting that stuff.
Yep.
Do you ever feel, as a member of the media, like it's kind of, my cartoon bubble showing like a doctor on a plane that doesn't want to know he's a doctor. I just want to be out to dinner tonight. But is there something you've ever covered? Like, I better write this down or snap a photo.
As far as like,
Was it a news story? I mean, doesn't have to be sports.
like while you're out and about.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened that much.
Okay.
Honestly.
No.
I would.
We'll chalk that up to a bad question.
No. I mean, I think a lot of that is I love the Buffalo community. They've always been, but I'm not. I live in Maple Grove, so that might help a little. If I go
Sure.
if I lived here, and maybe I'd see more stuff that I probably should see.
Sure.
So maybe, to answer your question, maybe that might be the reason why. So.
Okay.
Yep.
No, that's
Summertime rolls around and you get in North Star League baseball, and Buffalo Bulldogs putting out a good product here lately. And what do you have a favorite? Do you love that amateur, or do you prefer the high school scene, or is it all kind of the same?
I like the amateur a little bit for the fact, there's pros and cons to amateur baseball. I would say the con is, the late starts. Sometimes you don't get home till 11:30, and on a weekday or especially Sundays, sometimes they'll sneak a late game in there.
Right.
But as far as like amateur, it's a little looser. As far as like high school, everything is kind of really correct.
Yep.
Not as much arguing or
Kids.
bickering or.
Yeah.
You get a little of that trash talk in amateur, so that's
Yeah.
fun to be part of that.
Yep.
And it's also fun to see kids that are on the high school team, college teams, and professional or not, semi-pros or
Right.
that play the game professionally. So you have kids from like 17 years old to Ramon Vega age,
40,
almost.
yeah, right.
So,
And it runs the gamut of, guys who played in high school and never played again. And like you
Yep.
said, Ramon, who collected paychecks to play baseball, and they're coming together and playing pretty good
yeah.
good baseball.
And the Bulldogs, they won their first game. Unfortunately, I wasn't at that game, but fishing opener weekend. But
Sure.
they will be another top team to contend with in the state. And I think some of them had them ranked in the top 10 of the entire state
Sure.
in the preseason. So
Yep.
I'm going to
Should
go
be
out
fun
on
summer.
a limb. They're coming out later today, but it's going to be one of our next podcasts very soon. I'm going to say they're still undefeated, and this is going to be mid-June, late June when this episode airs. So don't let me down,
Yeah,
dogs.
don't-
speaking of jinxes,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I was at that first game, and they started off a little rusty, and I was like, "Ew, I thought they were supposed to be good." And then I saw the final score, on Facebook later that night. I'm like, "Yep, 14-7. That's
Yeah.
great." Just went on a rally.
they have that capability.
Yep.
I think they had one inning where they scored 7. So
Yep.
Buffalo baseball is strong right now at all levels. I know their high school team is flirting around 500, but that Lake Conference is not an easy conference. So if they were in that old Mississippi 8, they might be flirting around undefeated as well. So
yeah, what we had Tom Bauman in here for an episode of the podcast, and you've seen now Buffalo in the Mississippi 8 and now in the Lake.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of has their own opinions on Buffalo's, being a part of the Lake Conference. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they say that you're in it to win section titles and not conference titles. That's what a lot of the kids say. Now, personally, I mean, if you're asking me, I love it. I mean, when I played sports, I wanted to play the best people out there. You know, I didn't want to beat up on the little kid next door. And there's two mentalities to losing. Are you going to take that as a learning experience, or are you going to take it and pout? And I think for the most part, most of the teams have enjoyed the Lake Conference. I know the parents probably aren't fans of it, because they don't like seeing their kids getting beat down. But I honestly hope they stay in there, And from a reporting standpoint, it's a little less travel for me because, most of those schools are within a 30-mile Twin Cities radius, and you're not driving out to Chisago Lakes or...
Right, and you're seeing the best athletes in the state.
Correct.
Typically, which makes your job more enjoyable. And
very, very much so. You might not know it at that time,
Right.
But then 2-3 years go by and you see this kid's playing for the Gopher football team or even
drafted.
The Wild or something,
Right.
But it definitely brings a new energy to the table from a reporting standpoint.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned when you played. What did you play?
I like to play it all. So I was, it was a lot of soccer, baseball. I really love baseball. We did a little track and field, and then football until I got too small and kids got too big.
Yeah.
We'll stick to the round ball sports.
Right.
Yeah. No,
basketball too for a little while.
Mm-hmm. That's always fun. And did you play since little guy and?
That's the shame is, when I was real little, because I was so tiny and I'm still not the biggest guy, but, we kind of dominated our neighbors, and then as we get older, maybe we should just start writing about it.
Right.
But
yeah. Do you have a slower time of the year when things kind of slow down for you and you're able to catch your breath a little bit?
I'd say July, in the end of July, because even in June when school's out, I mean, you have Buffalo Days, you have the rodeo, typically the triathlon. Your weekends are actually more busier and your weekdays are less busy. But July and August is typically a good time where I can sneak a 7-day vacation in there.
Sure.
So that, I don't know. There's really not, but even then, when I'm on vacation, I'm still looking around at because there's nobody that does my job at the paper except for the other people that fill in. So.
Right. Cool.
Outside of the paper, what do you like to do?
Well, I mean, I do like to fish, but I don't get out there as often as I used to.
We never do.
Yeah. Not much of a golfer, Everyone says, let's go golfing or something, but I'm not that good. And of course, if you're not that good and you're playing with people that are, it's not that fun.
And I can tell you, too, that if you did like to golf, you wouldn't get out as much as you would like to. It's just like fishing.
My thought on that, I like to golf and fish, but if I'd had to give the edge, it'd be fishing. I'd like to play 18. We'll play heights occasionally, and that's an hour and a half. But if I had like a 5-hour window, I'd rather go fishing than golfing. So,
yes, it's more relaxing, less. I suppose it could be a little, what's the word here? Disappointing as well.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I should also add though that for several years I've collected sports cards, so that's kind of my
hot thing,
huge thing too. Like I on Twitter, like John Early of the Bulldogs, I see he's a collector too. So sometimes I like his posts on that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I've seen you post some stuff. Are you big into hockey cards?
Yes, baseball, football. I don't collect as much basketball, but
And that's the stuff that's worth the most, the NBA stuff. I could kind of geek out on cards with you, but I don't think anybody wants to
yeah.
watch that. Yeah.
Well, what's your favorite card now?
That I own or just want to? I'd say
How about both?
So both.
I want to get the Kaprizov. It's hard.
Oh, yeah.
That one's a tough one to get right now. eBay's going for over a couple $100 for it. So just came out too. So and cards are a little scarce right now.
Yeah.
Can't get them at Target.
Nope.
So again,
get in a fist fight over
I know
cards.
you guys could geek out about this, but I mean, why don't they just, is it intentional that they're only printing a dozen of them?
In the 80s and 90s, cards were worthless.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is they reproduced so many in the 80s, 90s, early 90s. And
Sure.
I think even the greatest Hall of Fame players are like 10 cents,
Yeah.
just because too many people have them.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Geek it out on.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I heard a stat once where they would have to increase production like 400x to get to basically where they tanked the value of cards in the 80s and 90s.
Sure.
To equal that. And so there is a little bit more awareness on how many of these are we. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, we can get off that.
That's a whole. That's a whole. Yeah, it's a whole different thing. But
Whole other podcast.
yeah. But as we're winding down right now, do you have any type of message from maybe somebody who wants to do sports reporting? Anything for our listeners?
Well, it's, I mean, I think the average person sees me out there with my camera, and unless they subscribe or they probably just think I shoot photos, and there's just so much more to it when you're the sports editor. You're out there shooting photos. That's the fun part. The hard part is, finding the time in your day, every day, like even when I'm not at the office or covering, you gotta put 2-3 hours aside to keep up on daily events, even if you're not there, or you're just going to get crushed. One day you're just going to get crushed where you're going to have to work all day.
Oh,
and
sure.
So, I mean, it's time management's the biggest thing. And then as far as like finding jobs, it's not easy, especially now, but if you're willing to bounce around a little bit and take a little bit of a, unless you land a good gig right away, you're not going to make a great living. Doing part-time gigs and stuff like that. So you're gonna have to, just because you like something, you gotta trust what you might want to do down the line as well. Can't just be happy with what you're doing. And
Sure.
That sounds kind of bad, but
No, that's all right.
I don't.
Actually, I want to bounce on another question. I know I was saying, no, we're winding down. But do you have a favorite sports reporter and a least favorite?
Newspaper or anything?
I would say any type of sports reporter, newspaper, could be, I don't know, fill in the blank. Joe Buck.
No.
I can't stand
it. I'm not a hater of Joe Buck, but yeah, he's. I know a lot of people like to hate on him.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
But he is very knowledgeable of his craft. He obviously comes from an intelligent family that knows what's going on. So
yeah,
I think just people like to hate. He's very successful, but yeah, he can get a little corny at times. But
yeah,
I think football. Well, the announcers I don't count as reporters, but I would say. Like locally, like Michael Russo is amazing.
Everybody loves him.
If you want a, prototypical sports reporter, I mean that guy he's on top of it. He loves what he's doing, and that's the great thing. You see some reporters out there, and you don't know if they like their job or if they even know what they're doing out there.
Right.
But he would be a guy that you would want to, idolize or something if you're a young reporter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't.
You don't have to answer the least favorite one.
Yeah.
Least, well, I mean, a lot of people did not like Sid Hartman.
Sure.
You know, I mean, he claimed to know it all, but you know, you get him out of his boundaries a little bit, and he didn't know, like hockey. You know, Sid Hartman did not know anything about hockey.
Well, you can add me to that list.
I think that's fair. I think it's a fair answer. It's great.
But I mean, I respected his longevity and his passion for the business. You know, I mean, he never retired.
Right.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a long one too.
Extremely long.
I hope to retire someday.
Yeah. Yes. I don't want to be like Sid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, for the Buffalo Community Podcast, Rob, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm Tyler Reiss.
I'm Mark Benzer, and we got Rob LaPlante.